Okie dokie. I think I'm actually ready to go. All right, everyone. Welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. Let me bring up my score sheet here. Oh my goodness, where the heck is it? uh, yes. Here we are. Okay. Again, everyone, welcome to Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies. This will be a 1 hour overanalysis. Jim and I are basically becoming like shrinks. We're not charging you quite the price, but we are limiting our sessions to 60 minutes, or we're going to do our damnedest. Today, we are going to be looking at Netflix's Oscar bait, The Power of the Dog, released, of course, in December, when every major studio casts out their lines, hoping to reel in a gold statue or eight. Now, this film from IMDb, charismatic rancher Phil Burbank, played, of course, by Mr. Cumberbatch, Benedict Cumberbatch. Charismatic, that's a word for him, inspires fear and awe in those around him. When his brother, Jesse Plemons, or Georgie, played by Jesse Plemons, brings home a new wife and her son, Phil torments them until he finds himself exposed to the possibility of love. Yeah, I'm not sure about this log line from IMDb. They might not have seen the movie. Anyway, this was directed by Jane Campion, also written by Jane Campion, based on the book The Power of the Dog by Thomas Savage. Released in 1967. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, and Kodi Smit-McPhee. It also stars Thomasin, McKenzie, Genevieve Lemon, Keith Carradine, and Francis Conroy. Let's go to our social nutrition checklist. Now, of course, we start with the reframe stamp. Did it qualify? No, it did not. You know what? Although you did have a writer, director in Jane Campion, Kirsten Dunst. I mean, you see it right in the poster there. It's all about it's all about Benedict Cumberbatch. Of course, then we have it wasn't union made, and you know what? I can't tell. Probably isn't good enough for union made. You want to see that union logo. So I had to give that one an X as well. What about the Bechdel test? And was there any conversation here? Now, here's the thing. As I was watching it, I initially said no, and that's how I've got written here. But you know what? We may have to reassess, and I'll wait for bringing in Jim before we talk about that, and of course going to the best chat on the internet. And then, last but certainly not least, was this film class conscious? And I've got to say that's a big fat no. So this right now leaves us a score of 0, 0 out of 100%, 0 out of 4. That said, I may have to reassess the Bechdel test, and we'll talk more about that with Jim and with the chat. Bring up my audio a little. Looks like you guys aren't hearing me. Oh, I think I know what I did. I might not have turned something on. We can fix that later. All right, everyone. I think now is the time for me to bring on my co-host with the most, Mr. Jim Chaboyko. How you doing, my friend? Oh, wait. Maybe repeat that. Your audio's a little hot, but otherwise you're sounding good, and I've unmuted you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go turn I'm going to mute myself, tell the crowd, tell the folks in the chat how your day has been, while I turn something else on that I forgot all about. Don't not look at the camera. Oh, very cool. And I'm kind of looking forward to chatting to you about that. Like, I mean, there's a part of me, yeah, it's a Western, or is it? This is a tough one. Like, it's certainly, there's more going on. It's not just a Western, but it certainly pulls on some of those tropes. It's almost I don't mean post-Western like postmodern, but hey, the era is dead. This character doesn't know it. But anyway, we can talk more about that when we get into the meaning. Before we get into the quick review, Jim, why don't we welcome, we got a couple of folks in the chat. Why don't we welcome them? I also want to welcome a few new subscribers that we got. But first of all, folks in the chat, we have got Walt, our man from Walt's Flicks Picks, Vlad65 in the chat. Good to see you, my friend. Let's go to a 2-shot. All right. We also have Richard L. Right here in Winterpeg. Good to see you, man. And I'm assuming Ms. Fowler, Katie Fowler, is not is in a similar vicinity. His partner. And then there we are. We've got have I still got you on mute, Jim? No, I do not. Yeah, you're oh, wait. You know what, Jim? Talk away there. Chat away. You know what? No one can hear you. Oh, my goodness. I may have dropped the ball here. I can hear you. I am not getting you in at all. Or no one else is getting you. Just a sec, folks, while I look at what's going on here in the background and seeing if I can't get Jim's audio addressed. Chat away, my friend, so I can sit. Let's see, you're a terrible man, Mr. Jaboyko. Terrible man. All right. Why is this not coming in? I don't think so. I think the problem is all on my end. For whatever reason. Here, you know what, Jim? I'm going to mute you, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself on Zoom. Okay. I can hear you, but for whatever reason, we're not able to pick you up. Fudge. My goodness, this is like a replay of just... I'm really sorry, folks. I am wondering why this is now. Okay, wait a second here. Okay. All right. Jim, chat away. I think we finally got you. There we go.
Mommy moo mamo. Mommy moo mamo. I'll just do some
yeah, we got that.
Excessive bell swinging.
Folks, my bad. And we missed Jim's charming anecdote about owl hunting, and not literal owl hunting. If you follow him on his social media, at Jimbo Zorn, JIMBOZORN on Instagram, you'll actually see some remarkable pictures of the local airborne fauna of the area through all 4 seasons, including of late a lot of snowy owls.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing around here.
Yeah. And
The birding crews all go out and they go south and they go on the side roads and stuff. And it's kind of a winter sport.
All right, my friend. First of all, now that we've actually got everything technically taken care of, I'm going to shamelessly, already right up front, beg everyone for a like. And then let's jump right into it. Jim.
Certainly.
Why don't you start us off with a quick review?
Sure. Well, I've got some written down, and of course the art is to make it not look like you're reading, but I felt like this one I had a lot of thoughts about it. It's got a great look. There are some great parts to it. The score by Radiohead's Johnny Greenwood, I really appreciated. It's one of those things, scores is you really appreciate it at the start, and then maybe they fade into the movie itself as it goes on. But very nicely shot. There was one shot of cattle making their way down the hillside that reminded me of the army in Akira Kurosawa's Ran. But the middle part of the movie is sort of what I had a bit of an issue with. Two of the most important sections when Peter and Rose are serving the mean Benedict Cumberbatch's Phil in a restaurant with his men. Yeah. I didn't really buy that they would be so delicate about it. I've worked in the service industry for years, and that was not in the Wild West or in the 1920s. I assume it would be even worse out there, and that they seemed a little bit delicate for that. But the other part of it too was the sort of the middle part about whether or not Rose could play the piano, and I just, one I didn't buy and one I didn't care about, and this was all. It was working to establish Benedict Cumberbatch as this sort of overarching this bully figure, and I didn't feel that it was that earth-shattering
bastard.
Yeah, and he was super obnoxious, but I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, I sort of while I enjoyed all the performances, I thought that was a little bit of a weakness. The best part of it was the last half hour. Also, Rose has a little bit of a journey. I didn't really buy that. It seemed a bit too sudden. And a little bit of a retconning here. Like at one point I sort of frustratingly put, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but I said, are these people all on the spectrum? Like I sort of there's another aspect to this, huge spoiler, but I didn't know what they were going for. They all seem to be either emotionally stunted or bad communicators, which might have been the case back in I keep on wanting to say the Old West, but it was the 1920s. So it's not.
Is when the story starts.
So, just a few years after The Dirty Dozen, which was seen as the end of that, they show airplanes and cars and things like that. But there are some of it, I appreciated that they're trying to, that Campion and company were sort of setting this type of story on its head. There were some plot beats that I enjoyed. There was a few things that I made notes, and I thought, obviously, this is going to happen, and it didn't. So ultimately, the story really hinges on whether Peter is more than he seems. So we can talk about that when we get into the spoiler zone. And like I said, the last half hour is the best part. Interestingly, no flashbacks, which they could have had. And for me, there was one scene that I thought was missing. And also, Adam Beach, fly down to New Zealand. We have 7 words for you to deliver, and that's it. So as a Winnipegger, that made me angry, damn it.
Literally 2 shots.
Yes. Yeah. And I went, is this Adam Beach? But anyway, outrage in the peg. But
who knows, though? He might have been like $400,000 and a trip to New Zealand. Can I bring my boy?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't. Okay, I'll be there by Monday.
Whatever you need.
But yeah. So ultimately, considering all the plaudits that it's gotten,
fact that they acknowledge that there is indigenous people existing at all in this space,
unlike a certain other Western we watched.
That I was like, oh well, thank God, at least I mean, it's a low bar, but anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
So just in conclusion, yeah, for all the plaudits it's gotten, won a bunch of Golden Globes if that means anything, won a bunch of Golden Globes last weekend. I was a little bit underwhelmed, but I have to say the story did stick with me. I've been thinking about it all day. There's some real vividness there. I just wish it had been there had been a little more heft, I think. How about you?
For myself, Jim, I'm going to, you know what, and I'll praise the look more in the craft. Although that does seem to be Campion's kind of, there's a certain look she likes, like everything's in shadow, everything's, if here's the key, let's film what's over here, let's film it from this side. Right. And, that kind of implies that everyone lives, there's a lot going on in shadow, which is certainly a theme of the piece. I was more kind of, this is going to suck at the beginning. And I'm still wondering, I would love for gay people, I want to now search how gay critics interpreted it, I know it was already a bit of a spoiler there, but at the beginning I was like, okay, could you make Kodi Smit-McPhee look any, coded as any more of a Nancy, which some of the characters call him. Jesse Plemons, a character he sometimes plays, this sort of doughy, well, is he going to man up? And Cumberbatch just is the biggest toxic male prick. And so and there's almost how many stereotypes can we shove in like 5 minutes? Even Kirsten Dunst as this, damaged, perhaps about to fall apart Belle, it's like Stella.
Yeah.
Blanche Dubois-esque character. But I gotta say, Jim, it did grow on me. By the end of the film, I was engaged. I was caring about the characters. And again, I would, I want to know what gay or like any of the LGBTQ to us community has to say about this, because it became more complex. And without getting into spoilers, the sexuality and the experience of these characters became potentially more complex. And I'll say, oh, it's not as simple as I was initially reacting to it. Of course, it's stunning. And I thought it was well performed. Even though these are all big players, it's still Jane Campion. So she's running... I imagine she's running that show. It's no big star running off with the production. This is definitely an Oscar focused movie. Do you know what I mean? Like it's definitely made for that. Will I remember it in 10 years? That's a tougher call. It's in some ways very, it's just a very dramatic character study kind of thing. It is interesting. Yeah. And more to talk about later, but I gotta admit, I thought better of the film as I watched it, and I'm although it still has problems, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you thought of it, Jim, in more detail. I got to admit, right now, on the balance of it all, that was worth my time.
Yeah. I mean, I generally find it hard to deep six any movie. There's always something, to watch, and Jane Campion is certainly proven to be an interesting director. But I mean, we can. It's been a while for her. I think it's been 12 years. So. And it was shot during COVID, so I mean that ultimately has probably nothing to do with the elements of story and that sort of thing that we're talking about. But who knows what that did to the project? So
yeah. Well, on that note, let's move into the spoiler zone.
The zone.
All right.
Picture,
yes. Let's move
picture,
into
if
the
you will, a man
zone.
giving away the end to a movie.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah. You know what? With your permission, I'd love to kick it off on craft.
Sure.
I think I am not sure, and I'm trying to remember the piano. Like in some respects, it's going over some of the same ground, a lot of repressed characters, etc. But the look of it, I keep going back to the look. This is there's a lot more room. It's about a ranch. It's about a ranch. The big ranch house, the big wide open spaces of New Zealand, because it was shot in New Zealand.
As Montana,
yeah. The big wide open spaces, that idea of, so you get more room, but it's still these characters being clothed in shadow, and even when they're outside, it seems like, it's everyone's backlit. And and I thought that was great. It moody without being too moody, too like obvious, and for lack of a better word, pretentious. It also seemed to me, Jim, as far as the costumes go, they felt real. What sets were built, were great. I did enjoy the idea of, on this big house, and it's like, are you still in the same bed as you were with kids? Yeah, you were. There you go.
Yeah.
I liked that room was so spare, that there's really, and there's like a disturbing lack of ornamentation. So that when there is something focused on as an ornament, it really kind of pops, even if it's not alive.
Yeah.
Or it's an animal. Anyway, I thought the look, everything seemed to be unified, Campion-esque. I didn't have enough time to look up the cinematographer. I would not be surprised, though, if it's a gentleman's name I can't remember. I wouldn't be surprised if I learn later. It's like, oh yeah, they've been working together since the 90s. What
Ari
did you
Wagner.
think? Yeah, what did you think
Of the craft? Well, I'll start, with the performances. Benedict. He's actually, if you look at even what he's done in the past couple of years, he chooses some pretty interesting projects.
I have to stop pressing the buttons.
No,
continue.
What I said.
The audience will understand.
He's been he's given good roles because he does well at them. It's sort of it's like on a bit of a loop there. But Jesse Plemons is funny because I often have issues with characters that are clued out or what have, or overbearing, and this movie had both of them. But actually, who else was in it was Thomasin, McKenzie, I believe was her name, from Jojo Rabbit. I thought, where have I seen this girl before? But she was one of the maids. So the performances were good and vivid, and it took some.
Another one who was also in it in a not necessarily blink and you'll miss it, maybe uncredited, was Campion's daughter, Miss Englert. Also an actor, but I believe she played one of the cowboys.
Oh, okay.
Buster.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Sutherland,
Yeah.
Bendy. Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
And I was actually wondering if there was anybody hidden in that group of that sort of nameless, faceless group of I meant to look it up, of the crew on the set. I bought it as Montana. I bought the whole area. If you remember the piano, that was sort of set on it was very rainy and almost jungly. It wasn't a jungle, but it was that sort of temperate rainforest almost on the North Island. This one was, well, it was set there. This one was set in Montana, but it was filmed on the South Island, in the Otago region, so drier and everything else. But those two movies have quite a different kind of look to them. One was really green, and this one was very yellowy. It had that browny, dusty sort of even the house was browns and dark brown and that sort of thing too. But
I agree completely, but I think that fits the subject matter.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I mean, sorry, continue.
No, a lot of the, and just to quote Stephanie Zacharek in Time, I read her because I thought, I wonder what Stephanie thought of this. She said, like John Ford, there's a lot of shots in frames, a lot of shots in windows where, you have that double shot from The Searchers where John Wayne's coming in through the door, right? So you have a lot of those kinds of shots as well, either as a sort of an ode or something to that effect.
Even when they're spying on, or even just watching the houseworkers go about their business. But I'm thinking, when she is practicing piano, when Kirsten Dunst's character's Rose, right?
Rose
Gordon, the widow Gordon. When she's practicing piano, it's that kind of there's always a frame around her of some sort until you get close.
Yeah.
No, but
and the sets were good. I sort of like they're in their little was it the Red Rose Inn? It was the Red Inn of some sort. Just sort of standing alone by itself. Again, this reminded me a little bit of the set on Fistful of Dollars. It sort of seemed to be partially studio lot and partial old buildings that were still there, with a great emphasis on landscape. But there was that one shot of the cattle coming down the hill in the first few minutes. And I just put it in my book. I went, ooh, they were kind of forming a little letter S coming down the hill. I mean, so it's got a great look to it. It's got great light. You see a lot of things on Twitter where they show, 4 different great shots of it, where people are like, ooh, check out Power of the Dog. So that was good. And then the score too, the first, it was just this sort of like this tense little guitar. And it's funny because somebody else posted on Twitter a 4-shot of 4 different shots for the movie. And they obviously had the subtitles on, and it said in brackets, uneasy music playing in each one of them.
Yeah.
So that was that sort of,
and very
built
discordant
at
times.
And that and even sounded a bit like a Radiohead album at the start. Just a little bit of a very minimalist kind of guitar at the very first few shots. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of anything else that so that would cover sort of the sound part of it. Yeah,
that's all good.
Yeah,
we don't have to cover everything. We only have an hour.
We're in the express aisle.
Oh, not that big a rush. We don't have to go crazy here. But
10 items or less.
I am going to take a brief moment, though. I didn't do it before, and I want to do it now. We do have some new subscribers. The channel slowly but surely, steadily grows. First of all, I want to thank Kenton Lockwood for subscribing recently. He subscribed on Boxing Day. Also, Brandy Barnard subscribed the other day. Vintage the One, and that's the numeral 1, subscribed to us, Jim, on Friday. And then most recently, another YouTuber, another guy in the movie space, someone a little more further on in his YouTuber-ness, Zach Goller, who loved your comment, Jim, from our parking lot reaction, where you had said Swashbuckling with consequences. Anyway,
yeah.
I just wanted to just shout them all out and thank them
cool.
for the recent subscription, as I thank everyone who's subscribed. And if you do have your subscription notice set, I don't, but some do, where they have it set where they subscribed, I will shout you out. My first chance I get. So there we go. What else, Mr. Chaboyko? Anything else you want to add before we move on to story?
Yeah, no, most of the stuff most of my notes actually have to do with story, I think. I'm just looking quickly. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to move on, that sounds good to me.
All right. Well, since story is what you want to, where your notes are, why don't we go to story, Jim? And why don't you kick us off? And then, yeah, I think that's also where people in the chat want to talk. I've seen a number of comments that will be interesting to bring up. But first, to you.
So yeah, I mean, my now that we've sort of entered the spoiler zone, or not sort of, but definitely entered the spoiler zone, part of my notes were
we didn't slide into it. We made an announcement.
There you go. Is that were these?
There was an announcement.
The early thing that I said, were these characters on the spectrum, or are they gay, or are they both? And I didn't understand the sort of the codifying that took place earlier on. Like I thought, okay, this guy, this character may be gay.
Yeses.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so, or are they both? Like it like I was, and I knew, because, it's sort of the trend now to talk about people who are on the spectrum, and there's even a little Jim, ASMR bit with the comb, and his little calming effect with the comb and that sort of thing. So I was sort of thinking that,
but even it's not even just that. It's like, is there grooming going on? Hence back to the comb. Who's grooming who? Is Benedict, was his character Frankie? What the heck was his character? Frankie.
Right? Phil.
Phil, thank you.
Yeah.
Was Phil's character groomed by a guy in his late 40s, 50s, when he was maybe a young man? It's almost like they skate right on the edge of consent. Anyway, continue. Yeah.
Well, and then it just the what goes around comes around, and so he finds himself in the company of this young man. It doesn't really say how old Peter is, but he's probably not yet 20, I would imagine. But then he relates the story about them having to lie beside each other one winter's night so he didn't catch hypothermia, and that's and
naked.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's an interesting question to just pop out.
Just go ahead, ask me anything. AMA. But waiting for a plane. AMA for the next 20 minutes.
The no longer Wild West version of AMA.
Yeah. But so there's a lot of sort of stuff that we're talking about currently that they put in this little bit of retconning, I guess. But so that's kind of an interesting thing. And there's a few aspects of it that are kind of sneaky, like the whole arc of Peter's character. He says basically what he's going to do. I got this online.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
in the first, he talks about protecting his mother.
Need to repeat that. You stuttered for a second.
Oh, sure. So the very first few lines of the movie, the first few spoken lines might have even been over credits, but it's the Peter character talking about what he's up to and how he's it's his job to protect his mother, and that's kind of an interesting thing. And then
later on there's that moment of, my dad thought I was maybe too strong and needed to be kinder.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Benedict.
And that so it's that whole
Phil.
thing, like,
oh, you got that wrong. It's like, I don't know, Phil. This is called foreboding. This is foreshadowing.
Yeah. I found him. I found my father, and I, hanging, and I cut him down myself, and so you're becoming aware that
me, but
he's
my
not
poor
just
mother who was crying. about me being teased.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so it's, this guy's a little more than he seems, and that's sort of what it hinges on, and that's what makes the last half hour of it, I think, a lot more not provocative, but just a lot more interesting. Basically,
Maybe
you're like, oh,
engaging.
things are happening.
This is
a trap. This is actually, he's setting some sort of trap up, and without really going ahead and and not doing the typical dramatic things where you're like infusing it with all kind of that music that, oh, this is happening. There's none of that. The music in the movie doesn't, aside from keeping you tense, doesn't tell you how to interpret the story, right?
And I think that's part of it is
it's
intentionally not a thriller. It could have been a thriller. It could have started with his death, and then the why done it, how it happened, etc. Whereas here, I think it's more of a, I think what makes that last half, it is that, how did Richard put, for a low-key, slow-going movie, I found it left a vivid impression in my imagination. And I think part of it is there's that slow build to, you don't know what, but you're building to something. There's going to be some resolution of all this conflict. And it's interesting, even though you start to get some sympathy for the devil, in this case, Phil, he is a bastard. He is awful to everyone around him. And Georgie is a nice guy, a kind man, but maybe just doesn't have quite what it takes to deal with, this nasty bastard, Phil. And the mother, and it was funny, actually, for a while, it was bugging me that she was that she kind of collapses, falls apart. But then I'm like, yeah, you're lonely for a long time. You are alone. Heck, you're alone in the Western United States as a woman, as a single parent. That is going to be hard. It's going to be just a physically demanding life. Your husband took his own life. There's going to be all that comes with that. And so that she was a closet alcoholic, or that's not actually it surprised me initially, but then it's like, no, that's a very human. And when I say reasonable, I mean, a lot of people end up getting so overwhelmed by a terrible set of circumstances, including, you imagine her own fucking husband can't read a room, it's like, she does not want to perform in front of these your fancy friends. Georgie, you fat bastard, listen, get the fat out of your ears. Hey. I say as a fat man myself.
For me, it's her do you get the impression that she had been an alcoholic before, or she sort of became one?
I suspect, there was the hating drinking, maybe because it may have been something she struggled with before. That moment where she takes a drink, where she's just been, it's the final straw, and it's like, because you see her taking the drink at the piano after that. And it's orange. That kind of, that she is both failing herself, but really needs the immediate relief, even though it's, so I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect, and it's why all of a sudden, and you know what, alcoholics are trying to be functional or semi-functional. They learn how to hide everything, but we were presented with a woman that's like, becomes fully fledged alcoholic. And I think the reason I bought it, and maybe others don't, maybe you didn't initially, is that's a subtle moment of, and if you caught the moment and interpreted it the way I did, not necessarily caught a moment, maybe it was just me reading into it, I just thought, no, she came to the ranch with a problem in her past that has returned. you know?
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And they're out on a ranch. I don't see an AA. Well, AA hadn't been invented yet. AA is not necessarily the be all and end all to dealing with addictions, but in 20s Montana, out in the range, didn't think there'd be a meeting nearby. Heck, it doesn't even look like there's a preacher nearby.
And also, her new husband takes off and leaves her with Mr. No Take a Bath for long stretches at a time. I'm not exactly sure what he was. I can't remember, but he was just gone for a while. And that's another sort of, don't leave this guy alone with her, dude. Well, give her some time.
Obviously, we're really getting the story of Phil and how Peter's going to take care of Phil. But I think if we had one of the great things about this movie and about the story itself is we see enough of the other characters to go, boy, what if this was about, and it's funny, other films, I'm thinking Legends of the Fall, River Runs Through It, even there's some of these other big out in, post the Wild West, well past the Wild West, those films. And I think of that, it's like, wow, you know what? You could have had the movie about Georgie and Rose and just about them. You could have had it in a way, Peter's the narrator, but it could have been about Peter's experience, just totally shown from his perspective.
That's what I was thinking.
These are real enough people that we could have seen it from any one of their perspectives, and it would have been a different movie and as compelling. I think that they chose it with Phil, I think is pretty cool too, because we also kind of go, what could have been from a different perspective is he's just a predator and a bastard and a predator. You kind of go, well, is he, or is it just of the time? They kind of make sure that, that there's that just barely age of consent. Was Bronco Henry, an older lover that introduced him to his sexuality, or was Bronco Henry just in the long line of, predators who was preyed upon by himself, like by some old nasty piece of work, right? Like there's enough there to kind of go, I'm not sure. And again, I'd love to know how an LGBTQ2S person, someone from the rainbow, would interpret. Actually, I bet you there's a lot of opinions and a range. It'd be nice to read some of that now, now that we've seen the film.
There was one comment on Twitter today, and I don't normally go to Twitter, but I was genuinely wondering what other people thought, and it was from somebody who identified as LGBTQ 2S, and that it was like, oh great, he's punished for being gay or something. I'm paraphrasing very badly, but and there was an aspect,
that was
because
my
he's
initial
gay,
worry at the beginning.
He's a tragic character. Yeah.
Listen, we're about to enter into meaning.
Sure.
I would like to, though, because we've committed to this hour thing, which I think is a wonderful thing. But I would love to, Jim, if it's cool with you, let's go to the chat. There's a few comments that have kind of loaded up, and I'm going to kind of work from the bottom. First of all, Vlad, here's one. I think he's saying on craft, Vlad's think of it as craft, but I also think it's a story question. On the craft, we're missing something about why Jesse Plemons' character, Georgie, is the way he is. Is that a missing scene? Is that asking me?
No, that's what I was talking about, the missing scene. Something I'll ask you later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You know what? Myself, I didn't see a missing scene there. I just kind of saw you've got a happens in siblings. You got the stronger, louder, the one who kind of runs the show. And then you got the kinder, perhaps more passive, the more sensual, not just, and he's not fat. He's well fed, as a rich rancher would be. But he's enjoying the bath. He's enjoying, he's willing, he's at least aware enough. He could read, or at least he could tell the woman's crying and, well, maybe upset and maybe because of us. Like he's that socially aware, and that he also wants to move on. You know what? Whereas you got the Phil, it's like, nope, everything's fine. We're going to sleep in the same bed we did as we were young boys. Like he wants nothing to change. Plemons' character, Georgie, wants to grow up and move on, get a wife, start living a life amongst other people. Like, I mean, the socializing, the wanting to, and yeah, some of it's like social climby stuff. So I think we saw enough.
Tuxedo.
I didn't feel the need for I didn't feel the need for another scene. I think Vlad actually refers to it as already a kind of a long film. I thought it was a slow film, but 2 hours and 8 minutes seemed to be appropriate. But yeah, any more scenes and it would be like, oh, really? Can we just, especially
the power of this, let's see, the power of the slog.
Yeah. The action, it doesn't pick up in a story momentum sense until quite late. I think, if we had any more scenes setting anything up, we would have been like, whew, we have to get out of here. Boy, it's hot in this sun.
I had a comment about a missing scene, but I'll
okay.
Do that later.
What else do we got here? Rob's question reminds me of On Golden Pond. Do we feel badly for, a guy, Henry Fonda, who has been a cold jerk all of his life because he's dying now? That's a tough one. Like, I mean, I do have a bit of sympathy for Phil. But part of it is they allow us, it's not so much that he's dying. I started having sympathy before him. I'm not necessarily, I don't feel that bad that he died. He was destroying everyone around him. He was doing his damnedest to hold his brother back. He was trying to destroy any chance he'd have of happiness with his wife, Rose. Totally drove Rose into alcoholism. And if Peter wasn't potentially let's say, on the spectrum of sociopathy, like a lot of surgeons are. Like, I mean, it's not, they score high in the psychopathic tests. It's like, I don't you feel bad that you're cutting into someone? No, I don't. I'm saving their lives. They should just be happy. What? Bother me? Nah, blood's fine, and you see those signs, and he wants to be a surgeon. So he's obviously, his mother's done the right thing to, and the father of focusing him in a pro-social manner, but, almost a Dexter-ish kind of, well, it doesn't mean I can't get my hands dirty in other ways.
There's an interesting scene, I think, and when he trapped a rabbit earlier, about halfway through the movie, and when I immediately wrote down in my book,
I said, even pet it too hard, just plain.
I said, bye, rabbit, thinking that Phil would find it and kill him because Peter's sensitive. And then they cut to the scene where the young maid comes in to check up on him, and he's dissecting the rabbit and all the guts are on the table. And I thought that was one of those story beats that I appreciated, because I sort of underestimated. I didn't see it coming. I thought that this was just total bait. This was an easy bait moment for the Pete and Phil, sort of internal battle that they have.
Yeah, no, I was like, they said, I want to be a surgeon. It's like, all right, no more doing that in the house. What else? So to answer Vlad's question, but I also kind of see that idea of On Golden Pond, that's a film. Boy, it had a lot of respect back in the day and no one talks about now. Well, except for us, apparently. Richard L. says, the dinner party revealed a lot. George needed Phil to be there as the conversationalist or glue that would make the party a success. I think it was it glue, or was it just to present a, hey, look, we're a normal family. Can you just watch yourself? And then come, it's her mother, to kind of be socially engaged. I'm not sure if I agree with you, Richard. What do you think, Jim? Like, I'm not sure I agree with Richard about Georgie needing Phil to be there to be the party runner, as much as I thought he needed to be there to, as part of Georgie's efforts to say, you know, we're a normal family. We can now start schmoozing with, well, the governor, you know, I can show off, you know, that's kind of the way I read that, but I can see where Richard's coming from. What do you think?
Well, Phil's almost too much of a loose cannon to control, and it depends what kind of mood he's in, of course. But I think it was more, well, maybe
Kramer,
some of that, because
if he was the Kramer of that horrible racist tirade.
they talk about him having a degree in, what was it now? Something kind of that counterintuitive that you wouldn't think that
Classics,
Phil would have.
I think.
Classics, yeah, I think that was
it was a classics, Latin or the classics, yeah.
So it could have been a combination of that, and also possessing united, not possessing, but showing a united front, and also maybe to take some of the heat off Rose. You know, if he was enough of a distraction, people would be, you know, not staring at the back of Rose's head too much. So, you know, there might have been an aspect of that there as well.
Yeah. Let's move on now, or let me
one last.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just one point here? Yeah. What I was referring to is a missing scene, and I just want other people's input on this. The last shot that they show of living Phil is him driving in a car to go to the hospital or to see the doctor. Mm-hmm. And then the next, it cuts immediately, I believe, to George looking at coffins at a funeral home. Yeah. And I sort of wonder, I'm surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, the restraint shown there to have Benedict Cumberbatch dying in the throes of anthrax poisoning would be kind of a scene chewer. And I'm surprised that a director would avoid that, but maybe that's kind of the point too, is that you didn't want, because that would be a horrible death. But
I think if we saw him have a horrible death, all of a sudden Peter becomes a villain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, as it's not a slasher, and although Phil is a nasty bastard, doesn't hit anyone. He doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, like he's a psychological terrorist, and someone who's obviously going through his own pain and his own struggles with his identity and everything. We get to see him as a human being too much for us to see him die in such a horrific way. You know, I think if we saw that, all of a sudden Peter's, Peter, you're ugly.
What have you done?
How did that rabbit die? You know, was it alive as you dissected it? You know, like you start to wonder, right?
It's kind of like Nicole Kidman's death on Moulin Rouge. I have tuberculosis. You know, that's. I think tuberculosis is a little harsher than that, but anyway.
Here's a question on that, though, and that's for you and everyone else. This goes to character motive. There's Benedict at the end. He's dying of anthrax. We know that, or you know, it's starting to dawn on us. He wants to give the whip to the boy. Is part of it now? And here's the question: it's left ambiguous and nice bit of storytelling. Does Phil want to? Does he really want to give it to him? Part because he's like, this is my act of love because it's about the only way I can express love, or is it here? I want you to know I know what you did to me.
Yeah,
you know, like or both. Even here's my love, but also, you know, my why. You know, whatever. Like, I mean, I think there's because there's that great moment, and again, a great bit of storytelling restraint. Don't show him dying, show him in this last as he's getting more confused, but he still wants that. He does want a human connection,
Yeah. So he's sort of stumbling to the car, and he just sort of drops it in the dirt, not on purpose.
Because Georgie is saying, "Is
that what
to him?"
Yeah.
But he was saying right then, "I want to give. Where's the boy? I want to give it to the boy." And Georgie's like, "I'll take care of that. We got to get you to the hospital." Because Georgie, God bless him, he understands. Hey, this woman's crying, and it has something to do with us. But after that, he couldn't read a room, or he can barely read a room. He's got more. In a way, Georgie might be a simpler man.
Yeah.
Maybe another reason why they don't need to explain him. Going back to Walt's question, is like, what's there to explain? We may actually see Georgie in his multitudes.
Well, he's so sort of stunned a lot of the times that I almost wonder if Bronco Henry had gotten to him as well, but just with a different.
Listen, Jim, we've got to wrap it up. Why don't you give us your quick, not story, give us the meaning. Give us the meaning, baby. Oh. You got a minute.
Oh, really? Don't be gay in the Wild West. No. I think it's just a statement about masculinity, and it's almost a modern lens through which to look at the masculinity of 100 years ago, and just showing a little bit how troublesome it could be, I guess. What did you think?
You know what? Yeah, and that may be part of what still bugs me. It does allow us, by giving that historical remove, we don't have to face the fact that this is actually talking about here and now. You know what? I'm starting. Yeah. It's one of the things. Sometimes you just need to make it obvious. And the movie we talked about last week was like, screw this. We're not going to dress it up too much. We're going to make it obvious. And who cares how much you whine about it's how obvious it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you are right. It is a commentary on masculinity and on sexuality.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a part of me, I think I've got an alarm going off in my home somewhere.
Oh.
Oh, for
the hour alarm.
Never mind. It is
Not
me,
is it?
And I gotta
okay.
fucking turn it. Pardon my poor language. Anyway, enough of that nonsense.
Sure.
I
wanted to add too that apparently Annie Proulx had a part as some sort of consultant on this.
She wrote the afterword in the original book.
Yeah, and then she said that
Brokeback Mountain.
Yes, this one informed how she wrote Brokeback Mountain, and there are some parallels here. Maybe if this one would have come out first, there would, it would be even a little bit more like disarming than it was.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole.
Okay, I got to cut you off there, Jim. Like sure. we've run out of time. We've talked too much about story.
Sure.
Which kind of, well. Maybe that is just the way we do it. Let's jump in, Jim, let's talk about next week's movie. What do we got coming up?
Oh.
What are we talking about next week?
We are talking about one that we did a parking lot review of a little while ago, and that would be Matrix Resurrections.
That is correct. We did do our reaction. Here is next week will be the deep dive at 9:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. That would be January 26th, correct? Or no, January 23rd.
No, the 23rd. Yeah.
23rd. And then, of course, the week after that will be Does It Hold Up? Announce that movie next week. All right, Jim, why don't you give us, are you giving Jane a pass or a fail?
Yeah, I'll give her a pass. I mean, there's other movies of hers that I've liked better, but I'll give her a pass. This one, like I said, bit of a weak middle, but I think it redeemed itself in the end.
I couldn't agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. And yeah, actually, I'm more respecting, even in our conversation, I respect her more than I did before.
Mm-hmm.
Like she needs my respect.
Yeah, you know, I have to say that as well.
Moving on. Final thoughts. You get one.
Oh, I do get one. Okay. I was just going to mention.
Truly, that's
all right.
it.
The end. Brokeback Mountain. There's a thing with the guy's shirts, and this one there's the handkerchief. So that's just the thing I wanted to throw out there. I thought that was sort of a nice parallel.
Yeah. And perhaps intentional. For myself, you know what? I just want to say thank you all for hanging in there. Another technical difficulty, which we were able to work our way through. Let's say goodbye to Jim. Let's say goodbye to everybody in our chat. Of course, we've got Walt, Vlad65. Actually, we got all three of the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars.
Yeah.
Walt 65, Richard L., and Katie Fowler. Huzzah! Thank you.
And I don't think
much.
we gave him any assignments today, so that's.
We have Yenna or Enya. No, it'd be Enya. Enya. Some bullshit Russian bot, which is kind of cool. So yeah, Richard, Katie, thank you guys all so very much. You are what makes our show great. We have the best chat on the internet, and I know we missed some of your comments, and I promise we'll start a little more efficiently and get into them more. But thanks for always bringing your A game. Yeah, Vlad, that probably won't happen. There's a technical issue. What I hope to do, Vlad, is be able to bring up individual comments now. Otherwise, yeah, this is kind of what we have. Sorry, man. Okay. Everybody, again, next week we are talking about the Matrix Resurrections, diving deep into that. And yeah, Jim, another great show. I will meet you in the green room. To everyone else, say, hey, everybody. Goodbye.